Hey guys, it's Joey. So I thought today I might do something a little differently. I wanted to try this out and I haven't done it yet, so this is going to be kind of a test run of it. We'll see how you guys like it. If you do, we'll do more. So in today's video, I thought I would do a little reading for everybody, maybe a little bedtime story. By someone who's not typically known for being a bedtime story writer. But I think you might enjoy it. I don't know. We'll see. Again, this is a little bit of an experiment. So if you guys turn out to like this, maybe I'll do something from somebody else or maybe more from this person. A very old writer. This is, again, not somebody that typically writes bedtime stories, but I thought it might be cool for a video, so I thought, why not try it out, see how people respond, see if they like it. So, the first, Joey in Space ASMR read along we're going to be doing is of H.P. Lovecraft. Again, like I said, not the most, not the best bedtime story, but I thought it'd be cool to read. There's a lot of short stories people might really enjoy. Hearing something a little different. I don't know if anybody else has done H.P. Lovecraft ASMR yet. If they have, well, great minds think alike, right? So this is one of those Barnes & Noble classic card collections. I forgot what they call it. But I have this, and I have a Shakespeare one, I believe, and a Edgar Allan Poe one. So maybe we'll do some Poe poems next time if you like. I do like horror, but I wouldn't say I'm a big horror fan. I'm not super into horror, but I enjoy it, and I like writing it myself. I like watching it. Maybe I'm a bigger horror fan than I think I am. Anyway, let's get into the story. Let's see which one we're going to read today. This is going to be old school. See, H.P. Lovecraft. Great tales of horror. You have a little Cthulhu there, too. Little baby Cthulhu. So, we could do the famous Call of Cthulhu, or we could do The Color Out of Space, which there was a new Nicolas Cage movie that came out recently, kind of inspired by that story. There's The Lurking Fear, the music of Eric Zahn, Dagon, Pickman's Model, The Dunwich Horror, which I believe is another more popular one. Again, I have not read all of this myself, so I might be reading it for the first time along with you. Since that's the case, I think we might do A Color Out of Space, if you guys are into that. Because I did watch the movie, and I haven't read this yet, but I think it's a good time to do it. So that's page 26. Take your time. Get there slowly. No rush. Take our time to get to page 26. "23, 24, 25. Oh, actually had my bookmark already on it with a bunch of pictures from the Strand Bookstore in New York City. It's kismet. Okay, The Color Out of Space. Let's read sort of the header. The final tale in Lovecraft's tremendous burst of fiction writing in 1926 to 27. This novelette was written in March 1927. Some critics have conjectured the influence of Charles Fort with his hints of extraterrestrial incursions from meteorites and similar sources. But Lovecraft read Fort's Book of the Damned, 1919, only toward the end of March. In this tale, Lovecraft richly develops his imaginary New England topography, this time in a rural setting. Edmund Wilson, generally hostile to Lovecraft's work, found much merit in the story's anticipation of the effects of atomic radiation on living creatures. Lovecraft submitted the story directly to Amazing Stories without sending it first to Weird Tales. Hugo Gernsback of Amazing accepted it readily, but paid Lovecraft only $25 for it. So there's a little background on our story here. Shall we begin? All right. Now, I think this might go on for a while. So, again, it was a novelette. So if we don't finish it today, maybe we'll finish it someday soon. Okay. I think we can get through this in a fairly timely fashion. Possibly. We'll see. All right. You guys ready? Here we go. The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. West of Arkham, the hills... You know what? Let me put this... Yeah. West of Arkham, the hills rise wild, and there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. There are dark, narrow glens where the trees slow fantastically, and where thin brooklets trickle without ever having caught the glint of sunlight. On the gentler slopes, there are farms, ancient and rocky, with squat, moss-coated cottages brooding eternally over old New England secrets in the lee of great ledges. But these are all vacant now, the wide chimneys crumbling and the shingled sides bulging perilously beneath the low gambrel roofs. The old folk have gone away, and foreigners do not like to live here. French Canadians have tried it, Italians have tried it, and the Poles have come and departed. It is not because of anything that can be seen or heard or handled, but because of something that is imagined. The place is not good for the imagination, and does not bring restful dreams at night. It must be this which keeps the foreigners away. Let me keep track of where I am. For old Amy Pierce, has never told them of anything he recalls from the strange days. I'm just going to go call him Ami. Ami, whose head has been a little queer for years, is the only one who still remains, or whoever talks of the strange days, and he dares to do this because his house is so near the open fields and the traveled roads around Arkham. There was once a road over the hills and through the valleys that ran straight, where the blasted heath is now. But people ceased to use it, and a new road was laid, curving far toward the south. Traces of the old one can still be found amidst the weeds of a returning wilderness, and some of them will doubtless linger even when half the hollows are flooded for the new reservoir. Then the dark woods will be cut down, and the blasted heath will slumber far below blue waters whose surface will mirror the sky and ripple in the sun. And the secrets of the strange days will be one with the deep's secrets, one with the hidden lore of old ocean, and all the mystery of primal earth. When I went into the hills and vales to survey for the new reservoir, they told me the place was evil. They told me this in Arkham, and because that is a very old town full of witch legends, I thought the evil must be something which grandmas had whispered to children through centuries. The name Blasted Heath seemed to me very odd and theatrical, and I wondered how it had come into the folklore of the Puritan people. Then I saw that dark westward tangle of glens and slopes for myself, and ceased to wonder at anything else besides its own elder mystery. It was morning when I saw it, but shadow lurked always there. The trees grew too thickly, and their trunks were too big for any healthy New England wood. There was too much silence in the dim alleys between them, and the floor was too soft with the dank moss and matting of infinite years of decay. In the open spaces mostly, along the line of the old road, there were little hillside farms, sometimes with all the buildings standing, sometimes with only one or two, sometimes with only a lone chimney or fast-filling cellar. Weeds and briars reigned, and furtive wild things rustled in the undergrowth. Upon everything was a haze of restlessness and oppression, a touch of the unreal and grotesque, as if some vital element of perspective or chiaroscuro were awry. I did not wonder that the foreigners would not stay, for this was no region to sleep in. It was too much like a landscape of Salvador Rosa, too much like some forbidden woodcut in a tale of terror. But even all this was not so bad as the blasted heath. I knew at the moment I came upon it at the bottom of a spacious valley, for no other name could fit such a thing, or any other thing fit such a name. It was as if the poet had coined the phrase from having seen this one particular region. It must, I thought, as I viewed it, be the outcome of a fire. But why had nothing new ever grown over those 5 acres of gray desolation that sprawled open to the sky like a great spot eaten by acid in the woods and fields? It lay largely to the north of the ancient road line, but encroached a little on the other side. I felt an odd reluctance about approaching, and did so at last only because my business took me through and past it. There was no vegetation of any kind on the broad expanse, but only a fine gray dust, or ash, which no wind seemed ever to blow about. The trees near it were sickly and stunted, and many dead trunks stood or lay rotting at the rim. As I walked hurriedly by, I saw the tumbled bricks and stones of an old chimney and cellar on my right, and the yawning black maw of an abandoned well whose stagnant vapors played strange tricks with the hues of the sunlight. Even the long, dark woodland climb beyond seemed welcome in contrast, and I marveled no more at the frightened whispers of Arkham people. There had been no house or ruin near. Even in the old days, the place must have been lonely and remote. And at twilight, dreading to repass that ominous spot, I walked circuitously back to the town by the curving, fumbling a little bit, road on the south. I vaguely wished some clouds would gather, for an odd timidity about the deep sky voids above have crept into my soul. In the evening, I asked old people in Arkham about the blasted heath and what was meant by the phrase "strange days," which so many evasively muttered. I could not, however, get any good answers, except that all the mystery was much more recent than I had dreamed. It was not a matter of old legendary at all, but something within the lifetime of those who spoke. It had happened in the 80s, and a family had disappeared or was killed. Speakers would not be exact, and because they all told me to pay no attention to old Amy Pierce's crazy tales, I sought him out the next morning. Having heard that he lived alone in the ancient tottering cottage where trees first began to get very thick, it was a fearsomely archaic place that had begun to exude the faint miasmal odor which clings about houses that have stood too long. Only with persistent knocking could I rouse the aged man, and when he shuffled timidly to the door, I could tell he was not glad to see me. He was not so feeble as I had expected, but his eyes drooped in a curious way, and his unkempt clothing and white beard made him seem very worn and dismal. Not knowing just how he could best be launched on his tales, I feigned a matter of business, told him of my surveying, and asked vague questions about the district. He was far brighter and more educated than I had been led to think. Before I knew it, before I knew it, had grasped quite as much of the subject as any man I had talked with in Arkham. He was not like other rustics I had known in the sections where reservoirs were to be. From him there were no protests at the miles of old wood and farmland to be blotted out, though perhaps there would have been had not his home laid outside the bounds of the future lake. Relief was all that he shewed, relief at the doom of the dark ancient valleys through which he had roamed all his life. They were better under water now, better under water since the strange days. And with this opening, his husky voice sank low, while his body leaned forward and his right forefinger began to point shakily and impressively. It was then that I heard the story, and as rambling voice scraped and whispered on, I shivered again and again despite the summer day. Often had to recall the speaker from ramblings, piece out scientific points which he knew only by a fading parrot memory of professors' talk, or bridge over gaps where his sense of logic and continuity broke down. When he was done, I did not wonder that his mind had snapped a trifle, or that the folk of Arkham would not speak of the blasted heath. I hurried back before sunset to my hotel, unwilling to have stars come out above me in the open. The next day, returned to Boston to give up my position. I could not go into that dim chaos of the old forest and slope again, or face another time that grassed Blay Heath where the black well yawned deep beside the rumbled bricks and stones. The reservoir will be built soon now, and all those elder secrets will be safe forever under watery fathoms. But even then, I do not believe I would like to visit that country by night. At least not when the sinister stars are out, and nothing could bribe me to drink the water, the new city water of Arkham. It all began, old Amy said, with the meteorite. Before that time, there had been no wild legends at all since the witch trials. And even then, the western woods were not feared half so as much as the small islands in the Miskatonic, where the devil held court beside a curious stone altar, older than the Indians. These were not haunted woods, and their fantastic dusk was never terrible till the strange days. Then there had come that white noontide cloud, that string of explosions in the air, that pillar of smoke from the valley far in the wood, and by night Arkham had heard all of the great rock that fell out of the sky and embedded itself into the ground beside the well at Nahum Gardner Place. That was the house which had stood where the blasted heath was to come, the trim white Nahum Gardner house amidst its fertile gardens and orchards. Nahum had come to town to tell people about the stone, and had dropped in at Amy Pierce's on the way. Amy was 40 then, and all the queer things were fixed very strongly in his mind. He and his wife had gone with the 3 professors from Miskatonic University, who hastened out the next morning to see the weird visitors from unknown stellar space, and had wondered why Nahum had called it so large the day before. It had shrunk. Nahum said he pointed out the big brownish mound above the ripped earth and charred grass near the archaic well sweep in his front yard, but the wise men answered that stones do not shrink. Its heat lingered persistently, and Nahum declared it had glowed faintly in the night. The professors tried it with a geologist's hammer and found it was softly odd. It was, in truth, so soft as to be almost plastic, and they gouged rather than chipped a specimen to take to the college for testing. They took it in an old pail borrowed from Nahum's kitchen, for even the small piece refused to grow cool. On the trip back, they stopped at Amy's to rest and seemed thoughtful when Mrs. Pierce remarked that the fragment was growing smaller and burning the bottom of the pail. Truly, it was not large, but perhaps they had taken less than they thought. The day after that, it was in June of '82, the professors had trooped out again in great excitement. As they passed Amy's, they told him what queer things the specimen had done, and how it had faded wholly away when they put it in a glass beaker. The beaker had gone too, and the wise men talked of the strange stone's affinity for silicon. It had acted quite unbelievably in that well-ordered laboratory, doing nothing at all and shooting no occluded gases when heated or charcoal, being wholly negative in the borax bead and soon proving itself absolutely non-volatile at any producible temperature, including that of oxyhydrogen blowpipe. On an anvil it appeared highly malleable, and in the dark its luminosity was very marked. Stubbornly refusing to grow cool, it soon had the college in a state of real excitement, and when upon heating before the spectroscope it displayed shifting bands unlike any known colors of the normal spectrum, there was much breathless talk of new elements, bizarre optical properties, and other things which puzzled men of science or weren't able to say when faced the unknown. Hot as it was, they tested it in the crucible with the proper reagents. Water did nothing. Hydrochloric acid was the same. Nitric acid and even aqua regia merely hissed and spattered against its torrid invulnerability. Ami had difficulty in recalling these things, but recognized some solvents as I mentioned them in the usual order of use. There were ammonia and caustic soda, alcohol, either nauseous, carbon disulfide, and a dozen others. But although the weight grew steadily less as time passed and the fragments seemed to be slightly cooling, there was no change in the solvents to shew that they had attacked the substance at all. It was a metal, though, beyond a doubt. It was magnetic, for one thing, and after its immersion in the acid solvents, there seemed to be faint traces of Widmatstatin figures found on the meteoric iron. When the cooling had grown very comfortable, the testing was carried on in glass, and it was in a glass beaker that they left the chips made of the original fragment during the work. Next morning, both chips and beaker were gone without a trace, and only a charred spot marked the place on the wooden shelf where they had been. With all this, professors told Ami as they paused at his door, and once more he went with them to see the stony messenger from the stars. Though this time his wife did not accompany them, it had now most certainly shrunk, and even the sober professors could not doubt the truth of what they saw. All around the dwindling brown lump near the well was a vacant space where the earth had caved in, and whereas it had been a good 7 feet across the day before, it was now scarcely 5. It was still hot, and the sages studied its surface curiously as they detached another and larger piece with a hammer and chisel. They gouged deeply this time as they pried away the smaller mass. They saw that the core of the thing was not quite homogeneous. They had uncovered what seemed to be the side of a large colored globule embedded in the substance, the color which resembled some of the bands in the meteor's strange spectrum. It was almost impossible to describe, and it was only by analogy that they called it a color at all. Its texture was glossy, and upon tapping it appeared to promise both brittleness and hollowness. One of the professors gave it a smart blow with a hammer, and it burst with a nervous little pop. Nothing was emitted at all, and all the trace of the thing vanished with puncturing. It left behind a hollow spherical space about 3 inches across, and although it profitable that others would be discovered as the enclosing substance wasted away. I think we're going to stop there for the day. Maybe we'll return to it. It is also late for me, and I would like to pick this up in a second one. So, if you guys would like to hear more of The Color Out of Space, if you have any comments, if you want to try a different story, we could do that too. Let me know in the comments below, and we can continue our story time, Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft, or we could try something else. Recommend something in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. That helps me know you guys are interested in seeing more videos and hearing more ASMR by me. But for now, I'm going to leave you. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Get some good rest. And I'll see you very soon, I hope. Have a good night.